Hello and welcome to the analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated November 30th, 2022. In this video, we are going to talk about two important newspaper articles. Now, these articles are going to be very important, very significant for the civil services examination because they have been taken from the Hindu newspaper. But this doesn't discard the fact that other articles were not significant. So other articles do not require going deep into that particular topic, but you can consider reading all of these newspaper articles which are present in your screen. And we do also have a PDF of it which we have uploaded in our Telegram channel. So do join us on Telegram as well, and do subscribe to this channel to never miss an update from the bureaucratic way. We put all the awesome videos, we explain the Hindu on a daily basis. So do consider subscribing to it. If this is very clear to you, let's head to the first important newspaper article. Now, this particular newspaper article talks about the strength and pendency. What is strength? The strength of the Supreme Court judges, and it talks about the pendency. Alright, so now this particular article talks about the fact that Supreme Court on Tuesday said that increasing the number of judges will not demolish the perennial problem of pendency. Pendency is regarding what? Pendency of the cases. Now the Supreme Court says that increasing the number of judges at this particular point of time, what is the strength of Supreme Court judges? It's 30. What is the required, what is the total strength? It is 31, and one seat is left vacant, or one judge is not present at this particular point of time. But the important fact over here is that all the seats have been filled up. Now the Supreme Court, in a petition, there was a petition which was filed, that is known as PIL, public interest litigation. Now this particular public interest litigation seeked to double the number of judges in the High Court and the District Judiciary, and this particular petition, according to the Supreme Court, is very simplistic in nature. So now the Supreme Court is saying that this particular problem won't be solved. So the Supreme Court has said we also have some of the solutions to your problems, right? So the first problem regarding this particular pendency of the cases is because of the unwillingness among the lawyers to take up the post of the judge. Now for the post of judge, you need someone who has a very good legal background so that he or she can deliver the justice in the highest with the highest form of integrity, right? But there is an unwillingness among the lawyers to take up the post of judge. And the second fact is that the number of judges are not enough. The number of judges are enough at this particular point of time. So an advocate by the name Mr. Upadhyay said that the judge population ratio in the developed countries was 50 for every million, and in India at this particular point of time we do have the enough number of judges or enough number of judicial seats. What's important is that the system needs to change. So this is also the reality of our judicial system, that we have widened access to the Supreme Court to a point that it is becoming dysfunctional. Supreme Court hears a lot of cases, it hears the PILs and all of the other cases which come from the high courts and all. So the Chief Justice said that the judiciary was overburdened because of the system. And apart from it, we also have lack of good judicial talents. So on Monday, Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul voiced similar concerns about finding good legal talent to join the bench after he and the CJI had met with the Chief Justices of the High Courts, and the Justice Kaul had said that 20% of the judicial posts in the High Courts were vacant, and they are vacant just because we can't find the judicial talents which we require for the judges of the High Courts or the Supreme Court. This is the main factors. These are the main factors, these are the main problems which have been identified by the CJI and the other judges. Alright, so now we have talked about the appointment of the judges, but how does the appointment of the judges happen? So it happens according to Article 124 Section 2 or Clause 2, right? So now the President of India shall appoint the judges after the consultation in such number of judges of the Supreme Court, High Court as he deems necessary. And for the appointment of any judge of Supreme Court other than the CJI must be consulted. All right, so this is how the articles are defined. Let's now talk about how present system of appointment came into being. Presently, we know that there's a collegium system for the appointment of the judges, but how did it came about? It came about by the three judges cases of 1981, 1991 and 1998, and all of these cases formalized the collegium system which we have right now. 1981, this was the first judges case. The second was the 1993, that is the second judges case, and the three judges case was 1998. So all of these came about, and it formed the what is known as the present collegium system of appointment of judges. And the collegium for appointing Supreme Court judge consists of CJI and four senior most judges of the Supreme Court, right? So now, what is the memorandum of procedure? How they are appointed? So memorandum of procedure, that is the MOP, was set up after the three judges case of 1998 to provide the process of how the collegium would recommend the names to the executive. And we also have the involvement of the president, which we have talked about in the article 124 clause 2. So the president of India can either accept the recommendation or send it back for reconsideration, but the reconsidered advice, the president can send for the reconsideration of any kind of appointment, but the reconsidered advice must be accepted by the president. Alright, so these are some of the pointers regarding the appointment of the judges. We have talked about what is known as collegium system. We have also talked about what are the problems underlying the pendency of the cases in the Supreme Court. So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. Let's now head to the next important newspaper article. Now this particular newspaper article talks about how the animals or the wildlife animals are being gambled. Their meat is being sold in Manipur. Alright, so now this particular article says that betting in parts of Manipur has literally gone wild. And how this has gone wild? So the wildlife activist based in the town said there have been instances of people buying raffle draw tickets ranging from 100 to 500 to try their luck to win exotic meat. They buy the tickets, and this particular tickets or the lucky draw tickets are not for winning any kind of lottery. They are for winning the exotic meat. Alright, so now larger or rarer the bird or animal or body part, the higher the price of the ticket. Now these all the wildlife animals get protection under the specific acts. We'll talk about the acts as well, but let's talk about the types of animals for betting, because that's also important. So apart from wild boars and deer, animals such as binturong are also seen in these raffle tickets. And apart from it, we also have the squirrels and the flying foxes, that are the bats. They are also found on offer, and different types of birds such as gray-sided thrush and tragopans, often horned, which is also known as horned pheasants, have also been spotted in these areas. And apart from it, it is to be considered over the fact, it is to be noted here that the tragopans, which are the blitz tragopans, are the state bird of adjoining Nagaland, and in Manipur they are being sold wildly. They are being bought to the raffle tickets, right? They are getting the lottery tickets regarding the exotic meat of these. So now this becomes very significant issue. So what is the governing authority regarding it? So now we do have some kind of acts, but before that, how are these gambles hidden? Now some of the raffle draws and other forms of gambling are organized under the pretext of raising funds for some cause or the other. Alright, so in order to buy the exotic meat, you need a substantial amount of money, right? Now the substantial amount of money is with whom? The rich. So the rich do what? They organize these particular events of raffle draws in such a way that it seems like they are raising funds for the some or the other cause. They are raising the funds for the good cause. But what they are doing? They are gambling over the meat of the exotic animals. Now this is troublesome. And here comes the Wildlife Protection Act. This is the particular act which is in place in order to protect all of these animals. Now, the Wildlife Protection Act, which was enacted in 1972, provides for the safeguard and protection of wildlife, flora and fauna in the country. And prior to this legislation, when this legislation was implemented in what, 1972? But before that, India had only 5 designated national parks, and at this particular point of time there are 101 national parks in India. This is the kind of impact Wildlife Protection Act 1972 brought about. It brought about some kind of structure to the country's protection of wildlife. Now, what are the salient features of the act? So the first feature is the prohibition of hunting. Now, the prohibition of hunting of any wildlife animal is specified in Schedule 1, 2nd, 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th of the act is going to be there, and so the prohibition is there. So the other thing is the prohibition of cutting and uprooting specified plants, and it prohibits, this particular act prohibits the uprooting, damage, collection, possession or selling of any specified plant from any forest land or any protected area. And who is going to specify it? Wildlife Protection Act, right? So now the declaration and protection of the wildlife animals, sanctuaries and national parks is also function of this particular act. So the central government can constitute any area as a sanctuary provided the area is of adequate ecological, faunal, floral, geomorphological, natural or zoological significance. And apart from it, we also have this particular act provides for the constitution of various bodies such as National and State Board for Wildlife. It also provides for the constitution of the Central Zoo Authority and the National Tigers Conservation Authority. Now, the act says that all the wildlife animals are under the protection of the government, and hunted wildlife animals, animal articles or meat of a wild animal and ivory imported into India, and an article made from such ivory shall be considered as the property of the government, because wildlife of India comes under the protection of the government. Government possesses all the wildlife animals. It is responsible for their protection. Now, this particular protection is provided through various mechanisms or through various bodies. Now, the first body we are talking about is the National Board for Wildlife. Now, it is the apex body for review of all the wildlife matters, and it also provides approval for projects in and around the national parks and sanctuaries. Now, this particular organization or this particular body is being chaired or is chaired by the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is responsible for the promotion of conservation and development of wildlife and forest. Now, the MOEFCC, that is Ministry of Forest and Climate Change, Environment, Forest and Climate Change, is the vice chairperson of the board, and the board is advisory in nature and can only advise the government on the policy making for the conservation of the wildlife. But it is to be noted over here that the board is chaired by the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister is what? The government in itself. Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers is the government in itself. So every kind of recommendation they are going to make is going to be more or less implemented. All right. So now we have also the State Board of Wildlife. We have talked about the National Board. Now we also have the State Board for Wildlife, and the state government is responsible for the constitution of the State Board of Wildlife, and the Chief Minister of the state or the Union Territory is the chairperson of the board, and the board advises the government in the matters of the selection and management of the areas to be declared as the protected areas. It is also responsible for the formulation of the policy for the protection and conservation of the wildlife, and it also deals with any matter relating to the amendment of any schedule of the Wildlife Protection Act, right? So these are the two bodies. Now let's talk about the Central Zoo Authority, because many of the animals are found in zoos as well. Some of the animals which have been hurt or they are incapable of surviving in the wildlife are put in the zoos, right? So this particular Central Zoo Authority consists of total 10 members, including the chairperson and a member secretary, and the Environment Minister himself or herself is the chairperson. Now, the authority provides recognition to the zoos and is also tasked with regulating the zoos across the country, and it lays down guidelines and prescribes rules under which animals may be transferred among zoos nationally and internationally. So this is the thing about the Central Zoo Authority. Let's not talk about the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, because you need something that brings about the fruition, or it's oversees that the all this act, that is the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, is implemented. So in case that you are committing a crime, then the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau comes into being. Now it is used to combat, or its function is to combat organized wildlife crime in the country, because it is a very organized wildlife crime, because the criminals are very organized. They know where to sell, where are they selling, where they need to hunt. So this particular crime bureau is going to control the killing of the wildlife. It is going to control all of the organized wildlife crime in the country. And apart from it, it has its headquarters in New Delhi, and it is mandated to collect and collate intelligence related to the organized wildlife crime activities and to disseminate the same to the state to apprehend the criminals. It also establishes a centralized wildlife crime data bank, and apart from it, it assists the state governments to ensure the success in the prosecutions related to the wildlife crimes. It cannot prosecute, this particular bureau cannot prosecute on its own, but it can assist the state governments in prosecuting all the criminals who are trying to sell the wildlife. And apart from it, this particular organization advises the government of India on issues relating to wildlife crimes, having national and international ramification, relevant policy and laws. So these are the these are the four organizations which have been constituted, or the four bodies which have been constituted under the act which is known as the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. And this is it regarding this particular article. We have talked about what is known as the raffle draws and how they are impacting the wildlife in the state of Manipur. And we also have talked about the national bird of Nagaland, which is Blitz tragopan. It needs to be state. We have talked about the state bird of Nagaland, which is the Blitz tragopan, right? So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article, and this is it for the day. Thank you from my side. Do like and share the video and subscribe to this channel. Have a good day. Bye.